Welcome back to another author interview at Crystal Lake here on the House of Shadows in Ink. And our guest today is Barry Maher, who's going to be talking about his book, The Great Dick and the Dysfunctional Demon. And I'm going to turn it over to him now and let him introduce himself. So take it away.
Great. Thank you. I'm the author of The Great Dick and the Dysfunctional Demon, and I like to get that out there as many times as possible. I also write the slightly off-kilter syndicated newspaper column, which you may or may not have in your local papers, but certainly should, of course. My background: in my misspent youth, I committed journalism of sorts. My stuff was probably in 100 different publications. And to eat, I probably had about that many different jobs. Moved around a lot. Sometimes I lived on the beach, not in a house on the beach with the seagulls and the sand. And then I discovered speaking and started telling my stories around the country, or eventually around the world, and writing on the side, basically. And that worked out real well for me. People started picking up my writing. It was translated around the world. As a speaker, I got to speak on the Today Show, got to play mini celebrity on a lot of the major networks. And I may be the only horror writer who's ever been in the pages of Funeral Services Insider. I'm maybe the only horror writer I ever wanted to be in the pages of Funeral Services Insider, but you got to have some claim to fame. The downside of my bio, I've actually been incarcerated twice. I'm a two-time loser. Once for not making a left-hand turn out of a left-hand turn lane, and once for aiding and abetting a loiterer. I'm deeply repentant, and that's me.
So give everyone a quick overview of the book, The Great Dick.
Yeah, that's interesting. You spend 2 years writing a book, and then you're supposed to summarize it in a couple of paragraphs. Not something I'm good at. I'm lucky in that we sent it out to a bunch of different authors for reviews. And we got 15 different raves from 15 prominent authors, most of them bestsellers. We got things like Gail Lind. Let me read this so I get it right. She said, witty, literate, scary, sexy, and powerfully evocative. And we got Kevin Tinto, who said an enormous amount of fun, wholly fresh and original, wickedly funny, a hot, sweaty, magic and murder-infused roller coaster of a story. So we got a lot of that stuff. But my description is not as exciting. But let me give you my factual description. 1982. Steve Witowski, that's an alias, not his real name. Used to be a counterculture hero for a while. Now he's just a failed songwriter and he's running from the law. He's also just killed a man. He stumbled onto a woman being attacked by what seems to be the strongest, maybe the most bloodthirsty wino in California. It's not working out for Steve right now. He knows he should be running, but the woman, Victoria, she's beyond stunning. She just bought this weird, dilapidated old church in the neighborhood, and she asks him if he'll stay and help. Will he? Yes, he will. She's beyond stunning. Even as the face of a man he just killed appears on his arm. And Victoria becomes just a part of them, just a small part, actually, of the mystery that basically he can't unravel. Even as he finds himself looting the decomposing dead in the near to the church for the secrets of a self-described sorcerer. So obviously the secrets of the sorcerer, they can't possibly work until they do. And unknown to Steve, a demon is growing pretty desperate. And that's my description, which is not nearly as interesting to me as the blurbs from the various writers.
Well, you got a poor little guy who gets dragged into a mess in over his head, basically. So it's a pretty good story, if you ask me.
It's a damn good story. I think it's not a very good description.
So what were your inspirations for writing the book?
That's a long story. You may be sorry you asked that question. The story involves, started out in Asia, involves $200 baseball caps and chainsaws and an MRI. But I was speaking on an Asian cruise, which is what I did as a professional speaker. And all of a sudden I realized that I couldn't tell time. which was not good. I couldn't figure out what the hands of the clock meant. I was also having trouble with currency. I was having trouble with foreign currency, but then even with US currency. I wanted to buy a baseball cap in Vietnam. It was a $7 cap, $7 American. I handed the woman 200s and a 10. It was a really nice baseball cap. It wasn't that nice a baseball cap. I got home, went to see the doctor. First thing he did was he had me draw a clock face, 10 minutes to 3. Second thing he did was take away my driver's license. Sent me down for an immediate MRI. The nurse there, she wouldn't talk about the results. She's not allowed to talk about the results. When I asked her where the men's room was, she said, I can't let you go in there alone. Not what you wanted to hear. Not what you wanted to hear alone. She said, you got to talk to your neurosurgeon. Neurosurgeon says you've got a brain tumor the size of a basketball. Maybe he said baseball. I wasn't tracking real well at that point. So, but it became really plain that what he wanted to do was to cut open my head with a power saw and to carve out the brain tumor. Suddenly, time didn't seem nearly as important. Besides, I could always buy a digital watch, right? The problem I had was he was a really smart guy. He was a really well-regarded guy. He had diplomas all over his wall, Harvard, Stanford, that kind of thing. But I've always thought that human intelligence is kind of overrated, really. I mean, if you think about it, on the scale of everything there is to know about the universe, every possible thing, the major difference between Einstein and like Coco the Wonder Chimp is that Einstein couldn't pick up bananas with his feet. At least he couldn't as far as I know. So I was really reticent about having this operation, but I went in there, maybe on the table, I had a stroke. They weren't sure if I had a little stroke or not, but it might have explained what happened because I came out of there with Lady Gaga singing nonstop in my head the same song over and over and over again. And I also came out with this story, which was like a memory. It's like I just watched it and I was remembering it. It was like really strange. I mean, when they start messing with your head, about anything can happen, right? I mean, it could have given me Citizen Kane or a couple of episodes of Seinfeld or a rom-com or something. But I'm getting open crypts, I'm getting sudden death, I'm getting weird spells, and I'm getting the Ralph Lauren version of the Manson family. I mean, it was like, how did your operation go? Well, I think I'm pretty good, but the people in my head went through hell. It's a very, very strange story. And I spent the next couple of years, once I was able to, I spent the next couple of days trying to work the thing out, trying to get all the details right, and trying to get the story down. And that became The Great Dick and the Dysfunctional Demon. And that's the long version.
Well, that is the most interesting inspiration behind the story I have ever heard, I have to say.
I don't know if you can call that inspiration. It's something.
Well, it was, I'm not sure if it would call it divinely inspired or just tumor inspired, maybe.
Yeah, medically inspired. I don't know.
Yeah, medically inspired. Yeah.
It was very, very strange. And it was particularly strange to me because the Lady Gaga thing went on for about 2 days, then went away. And at first I was afraid the story wouldn't go away. Then I was afraid the story would go away. But the story stuck with me, and I guess I was lucky because now I got the book out of it.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the main character that was inspired by your medical crisis. How did the character evolve, and what sort of personality did you develop for them within the book?
Well, the character, it's almost like I want to say he was just there. The character developed according to the situation he was in, the things that happened to him. It was very natural. It was very organic. He started out, as the story opens, the guy's not doing well. He's kind of a failure. He'd been kind of a success before. He was one of these people who kind of been born with a silver spoon in his mouth to a certain extent. He was a Harvard student. I mean, that sets you up pretty good in life. He was a hero in the counterculture, went to prison for it, which made him initially more of a hero, but then was not really a great experience. But then getting out of prison, he became fairly quickly a failure at what he wanted to do. He wanted to be a songwriter, and he didn't make it at all. I mean, he was worse than nothing. It was worse than nothing ever getting recorded because he only had one song ever recorded, and that was like the big B-side of a former flop record, a former has-beens or current has-beens current record. And that's all he managed to do. So he was a failure. Socially, become kind of a failure too. he gets involved with this woman, or he does, wondering if he can get involved with this woman named Victoria, who's bought this church. Victoria is money, she's success, she's beauty, she's basically everything that he isn't now. And he's thinking, what would it say? She seems like she might be accessible, like she might be interested in him. And he's thinking, what would it say about me if I could be involved with somebody like this? He is not thinking, boy, I really like Victoria. She's a wonderful person. I'd like to be involved with her, which is probably what you should be thinking, right? He's thinking, really, deep down inside, he's thinking, what would it say about me if I could be involved with Victoria? And that's how he goes into that situation. And that it sets up basically what's going to be happening to him. He's going for the wrong goals, for the wrong reasons, in the wrong way.
Yeah, and gets in over his head. So yeah, that's
quickly gets in over his head. And then there's a whole supernatural element which he doesn't count on.
Yeah. So the book also has a lot of humor in it. So does that kind of comedic writing come natural to you, or do you have to put in that little extra effort to get the timing right?
Yes, both. It tends to come naturally. I write a humor column. Professional speaker, right? I'm having a problem with my mouth today. I write a humor column, which is syndicated. And doing that, the thrust of the column is humor, of course, for a humor column. You tell your basic story, whatever the basic story is, and you work in as much humor as you possibly can. It doesn't matter if you diverge from the story a little bit. It doesn't matter if you tell some joke that doesn't have anything at all to do with the story. As long as it's funny, people are happy with it. It's an entirely different thing when you're writing a novel, particularly when you're writing a horror novel, where you've got, where you've got the plot, you've got the characters, you've got the dread, you got the emotions that people have got to be feeling. You've got to have the humor come out of the characters, come out of the situations. It's got to be totally, completely natural. So, I'd be writing that, we'd get the first draft down there, and there'd be something to put that in there, and then I'd have to work that and work it and make it work. Because the last thing you want is the wrong character making a joke at the wrong time. So, yes, it's natural, and yes, it takes a lot of work.
Okay, so what would you like your readers to take away from the novel?
I'd like them to take a couple of different copies to give to their friends. That would be nice. But what I'd like them to take away, I'd like them to look at Steve. Steve is a strange character. He's not really a hero. He's not your classical hero in that kind of a sense. He's more of an anti-hero. I'd like them to take a look at the things he does, and of course they're going to judge him. But I'd like them to look at their own lives in the light of the kind of things he does. And I think they will. Hopefully they will. He's not a perfect person by any stretch of the imagination. You're not, I would hope, going to agree with everything he does. You're going to think some things he does are very bad, but I'd like you to look at that. And I'd like you to imagine yourself in that kind of a situation and how you would react, maybe better, maybe worse. I think one of the great things about novels, about literature, is they do help us to examine ourselves. At any time, life can change completely, right? It's that old thing, the old Greek thing, count no man happy who's still alive. At any time, life can change completely. We got to make the best of what we have, obviously. Now, I'm not going to go into Auschwitz, and I'm not going to tell people to, keep smiling and pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But we do have to make the best of what we're going to be doing. We got to enjoy every bit of good time that we have. Steve is not in hell. He's not in Auschwitz, but he's flirting with hell. And he's got to try and find a way to get where he wants to go. But again, the problem is his goal is not really a worthwhile goal. And he's not going about it in the right way. So he's going the wrong way for the wrong reasons to the wrong place. Aside from that, he's doing everything right.
So what's your favorite scene in the book?
My favorite scene is the resolution. The resolution, you've got 5 characters that all come together. All their stories come together. All their desires come together. All their needs come together. And it's blowing up. 5 people basically all against each other. So it was the most fun scene to write. And it's the most fun scene to rewrite, because everything I write, I rewrite and rewrite and rewrite. And it was very, very exciting to write. And hopefully it's exciting to read.
Okay, so did you have any difficulty with any part of the book? Was there a scene or a character that kind of gave you a little bit of trouble?
Well, when you're writing a book, you're creating an entire world. It's all going to give you a little bit of trouble. Uh, the resolution gave me trouble in a way because I knew where it wanted to go, but the intensity that I went through writing it every single time, well, it was very taxing. I mean, I would literally come out after writing that scene or rewriting it or rewriting it or rewriting it, and I'd be soaking wet with sweat. So I guess that's kind of trouble. But I was so involved in the story, and hopefully the reader will get very involved when they're reading it.
Mm. So is there any part of writing fiction in general that is tricky for you?
The whole thing. I mean, you're creating an entirely different world, right? In a sense. I mean, maybe it's the United States, maybe it's the United States or wherever country you're in this particular time, but it's still an artificial world and you've got to make it real. And we aren't God, and that's difficult to do. It's difficult not to get caught up in your own assumptions. You believe it, and you better believe it while you're writing it, but you've also got to make the people that are going to be reading it believe it, and that's not always that easy. Just because you believe it, you can't. I mean, just because you believe in something, can you convince somebody else? Not necessarily. So you've got to use the devices that are going to make it believable for them too.
Yeah, definitely. I've had that issue myself. So yeah. So what's your favorite aspect of being a writer?
Writing. that's 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 the easy answer. When I first started writing, I I was writing articles and I was selling them and I wasn't making any money. Basically, I decided I was working at Roto-Rooter. I took a job with Roto-Rooter one day, and I'd been 3 hours into the job. I was standing on the roof in the rain, holding a frayed power cord of some toilet derouter, and I figured it would be better to try and be a novelist. I thought I would make more. That would make a lot more money if I wrote a nice, best-selling, well-received novel. So I figured that one shouldn't be much of a problem. After all, I had an English degree, should be able to write a novel instead of writing articles. And it took me, and again, that one took me 2 years. I wrote it. After 2 years, I couldn't get a single agent, not one single agent, to even look at the thing, to even look at it. It didn't matter to them that I had a degree in literature. Nobody even asked what my grade point average was. In fact, to this day, no one has ever asked what my grade point average was. Why do we work so hard in college unless you're in a grad school?
Okay, I will ask. What was your grade point average?
Well, I don't remember, but it was good. I graduated cum laude. But thank you for asking. You're the first person that's ever asked me that question. I'm totally off the track here. What's the question again?
Okay, so what was your favorite aspect of being a writer?
Yeah. So while I was writing that first book, it was like pulling teeth. It was like I said, I told myself I had to write 4 hours a day. I'd write, okay, that's 3 minutes. I got 3 minutes in. I'll get 20 minutes in later. I'll get 2 minutes in here. I'll get a minute and a half there, until I got my 4 hours. It was grueling. It was incredible. And I didn't enjoy it at all. I got it written. I probably had something. I probably caused my brain tumor because I used so much whiteout. I was doing it on a typewriter, but I didn't enjoy it at all. Writing The Great Dick and the Dysfunctional Demon, I loved writing it. I love writing my column. I love writing now. I write because I'd rather do that than anything else. And it's a whole different, hopefully that makes the writing better. I don't know. I'm not sure. People seem to think so. But I do it because at any given moment, I'd rather do that than anything else. And that's great. Because when I was writing those articles and when I was writing that first novel, all I kept thinking about was I'm competing against people that would rather write than anything else. And they're doing it 12, 16 hours a day. How can you compete with that? Now, hopefully, I'm the guy that's harder to compete with.
Hmm. So, what do you enjoy most about the horror genre?
I love scaring the hell out of myself and hopefully scaring the hell out of the reader. Uh, Also, it allows me to deal with issues in a way that doesn't offend anybody. It allows me to make my points in the context of a story, in the context of horror, uh, in a way that I think people will find accessible and will allow them to take those points and, hopefully see again how they would react under similar circumstances and see the good and the bad of the way that the protagonist, the anti-hero, Steve, acts.
Mm.
Yeah,
So,
was that a response to that answer?
yeah.
I get
Uh,
that a lot.
so have you branched out into other genres, or do you prefer writing horror fiction?
Well, right now I really like writing horror. I'm working on a second horror suspense novel. Uh, as I said, I started out with the novel that I originally came out to write. I started to write years and years and years ago when I quit that roto job after 3 hours, was science fiction. So I tried that. And then basically after that, I was writing nonfiction. I was building my speaking business. And that worked out real well and built a very nice business for myself. And now I'm back writing fiction again because it's a lot more fun than writing business books or marketing books or self-help books or all the other kinds of books I wrote. So yes, I have branched out, and yeah, I'm back home, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you chose one of the harder genres for your first foray
Oh,
into
thank you.
novels
Well,
with
maybe I'll
science
try another
fiction.
one. It is difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you've got to tell your story and you've got to actually make people feel it. They've got to, I mean, if you're writing science fiction, if people don't feel a particular scene, it's, maybe they'll feel the next one. Maybe it's not that important. But in horror, you've really got to grab them and you've got to keep them grabbed. It's, that's why it took
Yeah.
me 2 years to write it.
Yeah, you'll have to deal with a lot less science when you're writing horror too. With the science fiction, you've got so much that you have to, mix into the thing. I think horror is you've got a little more leeway with different things, but yeah. I mean, personally, science fiction is the genre I don't think I'd tackle myself personally. I mean, I love reading it, but I don't think I'd tackle writing it.
Well, I sold
So,
about 10 copies of that first book, so that says something right there.
so who are some of your favorite authors, and do you have anything special on your to-read list this year?
You know, I'll plug Crystal Lake on to read wrist, the to read bit wrist. Let me try and say that again. On the to read list, uh, I'm seeing a lot of really interesting stuff they put together. I wasn't that aware of Crystal Lake until we discovered it. I was going to self-publish this book at first, and I really liked it. And I said, "Well, we're going to be able to sell a lot of copies of this book." And then I realized what it would entail self-publishing. I'd have to learn a whole new industry. And so we started looking around and we found Crystal Lake and they looked very, very promising. And the authors they had looked very interesting. And the more I see them, the more interested I am. So that's those are a number of them are going to be on my to read list this year. As far as the authors I read everybody. I can't say I enjoy everybody, but I certainly read everybody. Uh, Peter Straub is one of my favorite horror writers. I think his early stuff is just amazing. Not to say his later stuff isn't great too, but I really enjoy his earlier stuff. Uh, Stephen King, of course. When some of the reviews we got started comparing story, somebody said it was like Anne Rice with a rewrite by Stephen King. I said that's great. Somebody else compared it to Lee Child. These are writers that don't necessarily have a great literary reputation, but they're great storytellers. And that's an incredible art, and it's incredibly difficult art. So when people are comparing my stuff to them, that's wonderful. I mean, I don't think I stand up to them. I don't think I'm as good a storyteller as they are, but some people do, and that's great to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's true. You don't necessarily have to be like them to have the same sort of style either. The same sort of flavor. I mean, I think every author is kind of their own person, their own sort of flavor to the thing. But some flavor from authors that you've read or know always seeps into what you write, I think.
Always. I don't think you could avoid it if you wanted to. I mean, I think I'm still influenced by Poe, Edgar Allan Poe. He does it as well as anybody has done it. So when I read his stuff again, I say, yeah, that's good. I'd like to be able to do that. Uh, so yeah, I think I've been influenced and continue to be influenced because I write all day, and then I read. I read what other people have written, and I think I'm constantly being influenced by that. I don't. I think what I have developed may be a bit unique. I don't know if that's good, bad, or indifferent, but I think the way I blend humor and horror is not completely unique. But it's not that other people don't necessarily do it, but I think I do it in a way that people don't necessarily do it. Um, when I started sending the book out to these authors to try and get blurbs, and I started getting about all the people coming back talking about the humor, I was surprised by how much they talked about the humor because I knew it was there, but I didn't realize how much the book was infused with it. And it really is, seeing it again, reading it again, going over to prepare it for publication. I realized that there was more in there, more humor in there than I expected, and hopefully more horror too.
Yeah, I think humorous horror is a little bit of a smaller subgenre too. So, finding a new book in that sort of subgenre can be kind of a refreshing surprise and a welcome one at that. So,
Yeah, hopefully. The book starts out without without really any horror at all, just a couple of hints of it, and works through the relationship, and then gradually, hopefully, explodes towards the end. And I think humor in the beginning, particularly, helps carry the book through to the explosion.
mm. Okay. So, tell us a little bit about some of the other books you've written.
I wrote a book called Legend, which was my science fiction book that I talked about. Uh, Legend's main claim to fame was it made the UPI's 10 most underrated list when it came out, and it proved by sales that it has been extremely underrated since. However, it's been in print for 30 years now from one publisher and another. And I just found out that somebody, I know it's published in print on demand with a company right now. And I just found out that somebody else is putting out an e-version of it. So I don't quite know what to do about that, if anything. The book never made me a lot of money. As I said, when I first started sending it out, I couldn't even get it read. It finally got picked up by a book packager who was going to make it, promised me wealth, fame, and beautiful lovers and a huge advance, none of which I ever received. Maybe I got a couple of beautiful lovers, but it had nothing to do with him, you know.
Mm.
Uh, so, uh, so yeah, the book took a while to find a home, and it never found really a good home. The second publisher brought out an edition with a nice cover, and they did generally a nice job. And then they called it what do they call it? An allegory. How to kill your book sales? Call it an allegory, and it sold just about as many copies as you would expect an allegory to sell, maybe a few less. So I still like the book. I still may try and start promoting it again at some point, uh, but it's really trying to find a good home still. Although people who read it seem to like it.
Mm.
My other books are basically all nonfiction. I wrote a book called How to Succeed in Business Without Selling Out, which did very well, except it wasn't called that because, like the day before publication, the day before they started printing them up, I got a call from the editor who said, we can't call it that. And I said, why? And she said, because you use the same word. The marketing people are objecting because you use the same word twice in the title. The title was Filling the Glass, How to Succeed in Business Without Selling Out. Took me 15 minutes to figure out without and selling out, they considered using the same word in the title. So we changed it to the subtitle to The Skeptic's Guide to Positive Thinking in Business. And that did very well. It translated widely and really helped build my speaking career too. We've sold a lot of those books over the years. So,
Mm. Yeah, sounds like a good book. Um, so what's your next project? What can readers expect from you in the future?
uh, suspense horror with some humor. Again, I'm working on it right now. The setup is a young man, mid-30s. His wife dies. They've had a terrible marriage. She's had to be institutionalized. She dies. He goes to the funeral, comes back, and she's standing in the living room. Only she's not standing in the living room. A hologram of her is standing in the living room. Only there's no projector, and there's no way anyone could have gotten in the apartment. And it takes off from there.
Ooh, that's an interesting premise, I say.
Yeah, it's a good setup, I think. It seems to be working. We'll see by the
Yeah.
time I finish it.
Well, that's something to look forward to. On that note, I think we'll wrap the interview up here, and thank you for being a guest. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
That's it for this episode. Bye for now, everyone.